Hello! So today I'm going to do the Authortube Newbie Tag and all the questions that go along with it. So let's get started. The first question is, how did you find out about Authortube? And I kind of talked about this a little bit in my I'm doing Authortube video, but I was on BookTube, and because I'm an avid reader, and then I saw Kate Kavanaugh's I Tried Writing Like Brandon Sanderson, and since Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author, I decided, ooh, that looks interesting. I'm a writer. I want to see what it was like for somebody to write like Brandon Sanderson, because I know that he has a really wacky writing schedule. So I was drawn into Kate Kavanaugh's channel through that video, and then I kept watching those, and eventually got to the point where I was watching every one of her new videos. So that was my gateway into Authortube. The second question is, what genre do you write in? Well, my primary is fantasy and sci-fi, but I also write a decent amount of poetry tending towards those genres. But I will write pretty much anything. I journal a decent amount, and I like mysteries. I'll read pretty much anything that's fantasy, and I'll write about anything that's fantasy that my mind can come up with. The third question is, what is your preferred writing tense, point of view, and category of story? So I tend towards the more adult genre, although I have written YA as well. Middle grade, I haven't tried anything middle grade, but I want to at some point. I tend to read more epic fantasy, which falls into the adult category, and I am a overwriter, so I tend to write longer pieces that wouldn't fit well in the YA category. As for tense, I'm better at, as for point of view, first person is easier for me because I'm used to journaling and I'm used to writing things that narrative essays based on my own life, but I prefer to write in third person limited. Question 4, am I a plotter, a pantser, or a plantser? So I am a bit of a plantser, but I tend more towards plotting. I need to plot beforehand, but I sometimes don't, and I'm still figuring it out because I'm a pretty new writer as far as finishing projects. It's interesting. I have my screen below me, so it's making a shadow on my face, and I'm getting distracted. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I am a plotter, but it's more like points on a map. So I sometimes go completely off my plot outline, and then I have to re-outline as I'm writing, which is fine, and it works for me. And I kind of pants between the two plot points that I've created, which gives me the ability to understand my characters more, and I really need that, at least in this stage in my writing. I haven't gotten my way of writing down pat yet. Question 5. Are you self-published, published, or yet to be published? I am yet to be published. I am hoping to start querying a novel within the year. That is the goal. Along with Millworthy, so I'm going to be drafting a lot and editing a decent amount as well. I am published at my school's literary magazine. I have a poem that was published, but I would still say yet to be published. Question number 6. What publishing company, literary agent, and/or printing company are you represented by or use? If you're not yet published, what is your dream publishing house and/or literary agent? So the goal would be to be published by Tor, which is one of the biggest ones out there, and I shoot for the stars. That's my goal, is to be published by Tor at some point, but I'm open to whatever. Yeah. Number 7, what Authortube related videos can we expect from your channel? So a lot of my videos are going to be updates on Milwordy because that's going to be where a lot of my focus is for this next year. But I also have an idea to read as much as the Rory Gilmore book reading list. So every book that was mentioned in Gilmore Girls that she read, there's a compiled list, and I'm going to try to read through them. Now, this is like 300 and some books, and I've read probably 40 or 50 of them, or like short stories within collections or whatever, which still leaves about 300. So even if I read a book a day, it would still take me almost a year. So I bought the first 10 books, and I'm just gonna update as I finish each book and kind of do a review of each of them because I think that'd be fun. So it's kind of a mix of my writing and my reading and just whatever else I think of in the meantime. Question 8. When did you start writing? So this is a really interesting question because I've been writing for as long as I can remember. I remember writing stories when I was a kid. We would go on a family vacation, be driving somewhere, and yes, I was a Warrior Cats girl. Take that as you will. But we would pass through the mountains, and I'd start thinking, oh, what clan would be here and all these things, and I'd start making up these, I guess you could consider them fan fictions, but I didn't actually write those down. I would write my own personal stories. Now, when did I get serious about writing? Quarantine, 2020. So a little backstory. Last spring, I auditioned for our spring musical, and I didn't make it. I went to callbacks, and I didn't make the show. So I had a lot of extra time on my hands that I would have been at rehearsals. And I decided to join our writing club, which I'd been getting emails for since my freshman year of college, and I was a junior. And I finally went to one of their meetings. So I got into writing, and I was working on my projects during school, which that's tough. I mean, it's hard to do schoolwork and write on at the same time and do a job, which I was doing all three. And then quarantine hit. I lost my job for 2 months, and I just spent a lot of time writing, and it became a habit. So I got serious about my writing back in like March. What is number 9? What is the first story you've ever written? Oh boy. I don't remember which one I wrote down first. The first novel that I tried to start writing was about a girl who heard a voice in her head that took her to this old dilapidated building, and she met a guy that had a voice in his head too, and it was their subconsciouses talking to each other, which like totally gonna go back and rewrite that at some point because kind of a fun idea, but I just didn't know how to write a novel back then. I think I was in high school when I wrote that, but I'm sure I wrote other things before that. There was a lot of like portal fantasy. You touch a few knobs on a tree or go through a cave and find yourself in another world. That escapism kind of thing you have as a child. That's the kind of stuff I wrote. Question number 10. What authors have inspired you the most? This is a big one for me because one of the big things was I went off to college, and I was in the honors college, and I was reading a lot of the classics, and I didn't have time to read fun stuff very often. So I kind of lost my love for fantasy that I had ever since I was in kindergarten. I mean, I read Lord of the Rings in 3rd grade, so I've been reading fantasy for as long as I can remember, but I kind of lost my love for it, and then I asked a friend what his favorite book was, and he said Mistborn. So I was like, I totally have to read it because it's his favorite, so of course I'm gonna read it. And I read it, and it became my favorite book like that. And ever since then, Brandon Sanderson has been my favorite author. Now, there's other influences like C.S. Lewis, because I grew up reading Narnia, and The Magician's Nephew is my absolute favorite. Again, kind of a portal fantasy. I just love that, escaping from our world and finding something new and different. It speaks to me a lot. Tolkien, Grandfather Tolkien, what's not to like? Yeah, I like a lot of the big name classic fantasy writers. But Brandon Sanderson is one of the biggest reasons that I got back into reading fantasy and I got back into writing fantasy. And his lecture series, which I'm going through right now and writing notes on, is so very helpful for somebody who was going to be an English major and then ended up being a business major. And I don't have as much of that writing education. It's really, really helpful to have something like that. Question number 11. Do you schedule your writing sessions or simply write whenever you have the time? So I'm in school right now. It's my last semester, and I'm not really able to schedule the time, but I'm trying to write every day. So if I have a late night class, I'll write earlier in the day. If I have a earlier class, I'll write later in the day. And that's whenever I'm not working. It just depends, but I try to write for at least an hour or two every day. And since starting Milwordy, I've been doing that no problem. But I'd love to at some point be able to schedule. I'm a morning person, but I also, when I write, I tend to stay up later. So it's kind of like I'm up early and I'm up late, and I don't know, maybe I should just become nocturnal, because I just love whenever there's nobody around, everything's quiet, and I can just focus on my writing. It's hard to do that during the day. Question number 12. Do you type or on a computer, typewriter, or write by hand, or a mix of those? I am primarily typing on my computer. I have a typewriter, but I need to get it fixed. Plus, it's just not conducive to writing large quantities. I'd love to write letters and stuff on a typewriter. That's neat. I love that. And writing by hand, the only thing I really write by hand is my journal and some notes. I will write notes by hand, but my handwriting sucks and my brain goes way too fast for my hand to keep up. That's probably part of why my handwriting sucks. So yeah, primarily computer. Question number 13, our last question. What are you most looking forward to now that you're part of Authortube? I'm looking forward to the community and kind of getting to know people through the comments and eventually doing live streams and sprinting together. I mean, I have a group of people that I can sprint with right now, but it's kind of nice to have that interface, and sometimes you come up with really fun ideas via live streams. People throw things in there and you're just like, oh, I never really would have thought of that. But that's absolutely brilliant. It makes me think of, I watch Brandon Sanderson's live streams on Thursdays whenever he does them. And the one night they came up with the Chicken Scouts, which now are a whole thing with the Kickstarter campaign that they did. So fun things can come out of all of this, and I'm really excited to see where this all goes. So that's it. Those are the 13 questions. I will be back sometime with the next video. Catch you later.